we say the biggest problem is out there? I know we got all kinds of problems, right? This issue and that issue. What's really the biggest problem? If you've been watching I'm Right here on the First TV for a while, you'll know the biggest problem is all the people who agree with us. You, me, the people who agree with the things we think, the things we say, yet they're not awake. They don't realize what's going on around them. They share our values, they share our wants, but they're not awake yet. They think everything's just kind of fine or a little different. But that brings us to our special tonight on the media. Why aren't those people awake? Are they all stupid? No, of course not. I'm sure some of them are stupid, but they're not all stupid. But they're not awake. You're awake. I'm awake. Why aren't they awake? Well, the simple answer is the American media. And I'll get to my sky is green theory here in a second, but I just want you to imagine something really quickly. I want you to imagine that we live in a little village somewhere. We're not in the United States. We're in some tiny village. 100 people live in this village. And there is somebody in this village, because everyone has different roles, right? You would have a chief, and you'd have a guy, he's in charge of the livestock, and everyone has different roles, right? But one guy, it's his job to pass the word along. Okay, so if there's some news for the village, this guy, it's his job to go disseminate that news everywhere. Hey, there's a rival tribe. They're on the way with axes and bows. They're coming to kill us. Get ready. Hey, it's supposed to rain tomorrow. Make sure you batten down the hatches. You got an election tomorrow. Show up. The guy whose job it is to pass down the word. Now imagine the chaos. Imagine the disaster that could be brought upon that village if that guy hated the village and actually wanted the village to burn, to end. Be crazy, right? Probably something he could pull off. After all, it's his job to pass the word. That's exactly what we have here in the United States of America. The American media, they're not biased, they're not left, they're not liberal, they're not broken, all these words the right will constantly use to describe the media. No, they're a hostile, insurrectionist force against this country that is absolutely, at this point in time, a national security threat, and their aim is to burn the country down. Now, back to your neighbor. Why won't he wake up? Why can't he wake up? Well, you see, I have this theory I've thrown around forever called the sky is green theory. And that theory is simply this. If the system, the media being a big part of the system, media, education, government, entertainment, all the different pillars that hold up your society, if the system wanted a huge percentage of the people to believe something that everyone can see plainly isn't true, they could still be able to pull it off. If they wanted to convince half the population the sky is green, they could do it. And you might say, I'm nuts. Jesse, they could never. Jesse, I'm looking up at the sky right now. It's clearly blue. People would never remember this. But you're wrong. You underestimate the power of propaganda. You underestimate the power of shame. You see, immediately there would be scientist after scientist. I went to MIT. I'm Dr. Nerd. I have 9,000 degrees. They'd be all over television every single night on the media. Well, it's a new scientific discovery. It's actually a trick by your eyes. If you add the pronouns or whatever the heck they call those things, you'll find out the sky is green. They'd make Hollywood movies and they'd color the sky green. Your child's social studies teacher, college professor, would force your child to acknowledge the greenness of the sky or they wouldn't be able to graduate. Your kid's favorite or maybe your favorite actor, actress, sports star that have a video up on Instagram. Hey guys, get ready for the Super Bowl. Just can't believe the green sky. Over and over and over and over and over again so that anywhere a normal person looked, again, I'm not talking tip of the spear type person like you, a normal person, anywhere they looked, they would get barraged with over and over and over again, lie after lie after lie. And soon, a huge portion of this population, 50%, would believe it. And beyond the 50%, this is the reality of the sky is green theory. And the media is really super at fault for this. The people who didn't believe it, many people who didn't believe it, would go along with it anyway because they didn't want to be shamed by friends and family and coworkers on social media, in real life. Everyone gathers at a party this Friday. Everyone's got a beer, eating some Triscuits and cheese in the kitchen because Triscuits and cheese is delicious. And everybody gathers around. Man, can you believe that about the green sky? Oh, I know, I saw it on the news. Hey, I saw a doctor do it. Whoa, it's crazy. The scientists are all saying it. And there you are in the corner. It doesn't look green. Well, just keep quiet. I don't want to get yelled at. That's what we have in this country. The American media brings lies on purpose to the front door of your normal friend, and that's why he can't wake up, because his entire world is a lie and he doesn't know it. Do you remember the Black Lives Matter rally? People said the American media covered for all the Black Lives Matter Antifa filth as they were burning down American cities. They didn't cover for them. They cheered for them.
I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly.
That ain't a riot, what we're seeing right now in Minneapolis. They are strictly principled anti-fascists, and they've taken a principled stand to stand against white supremacists and white nationalists wherever they may show up.
I argue to you tonight, all punches are not equal morally.
It says it right in the name, Antifa, anti-fascism, which is what they were there fighting. Listen, there's, no organization is perfect. There was some violence.
Any reasonable person would say we shouldn't be destroying other people's property, but these are not reasonable times.
But thank goodness for the looters, man.
And please, show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
That's how they covered Black Lives Matter and Antifa, street communists murdering people, torching buildings, destroying lives. That's how they chose to cover those stories. Why? Because they're all on the same side. The American media wants the same thing Black Lives Matter wants. They want the same thing Antifa wants. They all think America's evil and sucks and America should be burnt to the ground. So when they see a bunch of street animals burning down a Foot Locker after looting the newest set of Jordans, the American media, they don't choose to cover for it. Before they go on camera, they're cheering it. Woohoo! This is nice, guys. Screw America. And then they go on TV and do show me in the Constitution. And that's why they cover you the way they cover you.
Is that messaging calling Republicans extremist enough, or do Democrats need to do more than that?
We have to stop separating the GOP from right-wing extremists. I mean, the party has morphed into one.
Is it as obvious as it seems that domestic violent extremists are an important part of the voting coalition on the right? I mean, what is the structural impediment to hardening the homeland against domestic violent extremism?
People like DeSantis, people like this judge, they are extremists.
You almost have to admire how they numb us to their extremism.
But can you be full-throated about the reality? Can you call out GOP extremism for what it is?
See, the BLM Antifa people, they get covered the way they get covered because the media agrees with them. You get covered, you get called an extremist, a Nazi, a white supremacist, because that's what the media thinks. They think you're an enemy of the state. That's just a fact. Let's not lose sight of the fact that Joe Biden is president for several reasons. One of those reasons is the American people were not made aware that the president, now President Joe Biden, is intimately involved with his son and has been in several different business ventures with hostile foreign powers. And not only is that incredible national security threat a reality, the media covered it up for you, and we knew for a fact what I just said was true before the election because his crackhead son left his laptop at a laptop repair shop. And the American media, as you're about to see, they aren't biased, they aren't left, they aren't liberal, they aren't leaning this way. They're actively campaigning on behalf of the communists and against you as they covered for Hunter.
There's no evidence that Hunter Biden has done anything wrong.
There is no evidence of any wrongdoing between by Biden, by Joe Biden, or by Hunter Biden.
There's no evidence that Joe Biden actually did anything wrong or did anything to sway things in Hunter Biden's favor. He's denied that his son ever lobbied him for anything. There is nothing wrong that Vice President Biden did.
President Trump has falsely accused your son of doing something wrong while serving on a company board in Ukraine. I want to point out there's no evidence of wrongdoing by either one of you.
We have looked, lots of outlets have looked.
Hunter Biden did nothing wrong. Vice President Biden did nothing wrong. And every single media outlet has said that there's no there to these allegations, lies, and smears.
I've never read a memoir like this one before. This is Hunter Biden's book, Beautiful Things. It's breathtaking.
We do have an enemy of the state operating within the borders of this country, but it's not you, it's the American media. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I am right. Curtis Houck knows just a little bit about the American media. He joins us next.
The U.S. president possibly working for the Russians, possibly an unwitting pawn.
Now, here's what the president said when asked if he was a secret Russian agent.
Donald Trump knows the noose is tightening.
The noose is tightening.
The noose is tightening, if you will.
The noose is tightening around the president.
The noose is tightening.
And I think they're shocked that the noose is tightening and that people might go to jail.
He knows he and POTUS are going to prison.
Well, I think they're all going to end up together in prison, and maybe that's a good thing.
God.
The noose is tightening. Joining me now, my friend Curtis Houck, managing editor at the Media Research Center. Curtis, let me ask you something. Did Trump's presidency break the media or expose the media?
It exposed the media, I think, Jesse. It's one of those things where, like, you're sick and, you know, the media were sick well before that. We saw that through the Obama years, in previous administrations as well, going back to even Ronald Reagan when the MRC was founded in 1987. But really, I think it took Donald Trump to really show that, expose that for the wider masses. It's like an ailment that if you know your body really well, or you're a fitness or health junkie, you might notice certain things, whereas, you know, a normal layperson might not until things have really progressed. So it's very similar to that. Where the news media in the Trump era just became completely deranged. You know, yes, people's brains were broken, but a lot of people were already on the precipice, and that just kind of sent them careening over the edge instead of slowly falling off the side.
Why? What was it about Trump? Now, I realize he's a strong personality. I get it. He's bombastic and charismatic and wild and did things different, but I find it so odd how many people he pushed over the edge, as you just put it. Why?
Yeah, I think it was a couple of reasons. One, yes, he was bombastic. Two, he used to be part of them. He used to be a, you know, New York City liberal who gave money and went to the same fundraisers and went to the same parties as they did in New York. And they didn't like that they beat them at their own game. The other part is that he was made famous in large part due to The Apprentice, something on NBC. Big Bad NBC News, created by Jeff Zucker, CNN, former CNN boss. And I think the other point was that when they looked at the field, the 2016 field, well over a dozen candidates, they wanted Donald Trump. Joe and Mika saddled up to Donald Trump. They shacked up with Donald Trump. They promoted him, you know, to the point that it just seemed creepy. CNN had empty podium shots because they thought that this is the guy that will beat Hillary Clinton because we don't know who he is, and he's just so unhinged. And then it backfired on them. So it not only backfired, Trump would routinely rub it in their faces and pile drive them into the ground and be able to just see through when he was being insulted. You saw that often in previous years with George W. Bush and his folks in his administration. The media would say horrible things about them, and they would just try and think killing them with kindness would really do the trick. And really, the media aren't playing for keeps, and they still aren't playing for keeps. They're a reflection of the wider left in this country. And so I think Trump not only identified that, said, no, we're not going to play that game anymore. I'm going to throw it back in your face. And with his press secretaries, particularly Sarah Sanders and Kayleigh McEnany, you know, bring facts to the table and make actual coherent arguments in addition to the bombast as well. So that potent combination was something that was just way too much for those people to understand. They're still grappling with that to this day.
Curtis, Jim Acosta and those like him. Actually, this little clip, I think, exposes a lot of what I want to ask.
They're hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's
I
not
think
an
you
invasion.
should, honestly, you know
miles
what?
away.
I
That's
think
not an
you
invasion.
should, honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings
Let
would
me
be
ask,
much better.
if I may
Okay,
ask
that's
one other
enough.
question, Mr. President. I was
That's
going
enough.
to ask one of the other folks.
That's
have had,
enough.
Pardon me, ma'am.
Excuse
Mr.
me,
President,
that's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other
Peter,
question,
let's
if
go.
I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have
I'm not concerned
indictments-
about anything with
that you
the
may have
Russian
indictments coming down?
investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic. I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead. Go ahead, Peter, go ahead.
In Jim's defense, I've traveled with him and watched him. He's a diligent reporter who busts his
Well, I'm
butt
not a
like the
big
rest
fan
of
of
us.
yours either, so
I understand.
to be honest.
So let me ask you a question if I can. You repeatedly said...
You aren't the best.
Mr. President, you repeatedly, over the course of
Okay,
the...
just sit down, please. Well, when you report fake news, when you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people.
Okay, Curtis, Jim Acosta, everyone remembers that clown from the Trump era. But when he's standing up there and he's making a big jackass of himself, does he see himself as the vanguard protecting the country? Does he see himself as just the guy who understands this is my moment to try to increase my brand and better my career? What's going through that guy's mind?
Sadly, Jesse, I think it is the former. He really is just that full of himself. I mean, this is the same guy who went to, I believe, the Clarendon, Virginia Barnes & Noble and stood there with a stack of books and said, I was holding a book signing with no one behind him in, the picture. So, I mean, that's the kind of guy that we're dealing with here. Or who take picture, everyone knows that picture of appearing on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert where it's a picture of Jim looking at himself in the mirror in the dressing room. Or I think it was Variety or one of these other entertainment magazines. It was him sitting on a park bench in New York City just staring off into the distance, like purely, just in awe of himself. I mean, so I think, this is the kind of guy who really is that full of himself, really thinks that highly of himself. I read his book. I might have been the only person in America other than maybe his parents who read this book. And it was just the complete, tour de force of narcissism. It was, really, he's the head of the Legion of Dumb. It was just filled with petty anecdotes. Everything that he accuses Donald Trump of, he's been guilty of himself.
Curtis, all right, now the media and Joe Biden and the documents. This is CBS.
We have new information on the documents marked classified that were found in President Biden's home and his former office.
And we now know that the Department of Justice took this seriously enough to have the FBI go in and search.
We keep hearing about transparency, but then you hear stories like this, so it does raise even more questions.
Curtis, I think they're taking out Joe. I think this is a controlled demolition of Joe Biden so he can't run again. They don't want to take him out as in Fort Leavenworth, but take him out as in, hey, Joe, just announce you're gone so we can bring in Gavin Newsom. Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair, Jesse. This provides them the opportunity to really have an easy out, because before this, the Mar-a-Lago raid was like their Super Bowl. And the fact that that's more or less been neutralized by Joe Biden's document scandal just really breaks their heart. The press briefings have been just absolute whirlwinds with one question after another, both tough and seemingly normal, that Karine Jean-Pierre can't really answer. Not that she never answered, that she answered questions to begin with, but it just became all the more embarrassing. And with Joe Biden, himself, the reporting on him has just been very straightforward. The news articles have been thorough. They're talking about what's missing, what the White House hasn't been saying, what we know so far. It's the who, what, where, when, why, how that we should be expecting when it comes to traditional media coverage. And when you see that of anything regarding a Democrat in terms of a negative scandal, that's a really, really bad sign for them. And I think you're right, Gavin Newsom is the guy that they're going to go to, because the Washington Post did a story recently that suggested, people
Democratic donors, people in power on the left, not really good with Kamala Harris for obvious reasons.
Oh, poor Dome. Curtis, thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem, Jesse.
See you, bud. We'll be back. You know, we don't do enough for lighten the mood. Because you know, at the end of every show, we like to lighten the mood. Play a little video, maybe something stupid a politician did, something heartwarming every now and then. We don't go back to the classics. Because, man, there have been some classics. You remember this little gem?
One resident describes her horrifying experience when she first realized the complex was on fire.
Well, I woke up to go get me a cold pop, and then I thought somebody was barbecuing. I said, oh, Lord Jesus, it's a fire. Then I ran out. I didn't grab no shoes or nothing, Jesus. I ran for my life. And then the smoke got me. I got bronchitis. Ain't nobody got time for that.
I'll see you.